Hi, I'm Mary Thaler, and I write the comic Bog-haunter, in which tiny human beings live in a world of giant insects. But you don't have to be in a special world of tiny people for humans and insects to be interacting every day. So today I have the pleasure of talking to Rizalyn Cudera. She's a researcher at the Sultan Kudarat State University in Tacurang City in the Philippines, and she's going to be talking to us about her work. So welcome, Rizalyn.
Thank you, Mary, for inviting me.
You study the way that humans and insects interact and the importance of insects to human culture. Can you tell us a little bit about your field and why it's so important?
I started studying Odonata way back in my college years. And then when I wanted to continue the career in research, I decided to not simply study biodiversity, but I want to know how it impacts the community, how the community use these insects. That's the usual reaction that you will hear from them. Oh, you're studying insect, only chicken will eat insect, you know. The field of ethnoentomology is actually understudied, and the indigenous people's practices are not well documented. So it is important to document their practices to preserve their knowledge.
The group of people that you studied, for them, dragonflies are actually significant in multiple ways to their culture.
We interviewed the Triboli ethno-linguistic group. So they are tribe in Lake Cebu, South Cotabato, here in the Philippines. And during our interview, they mentioned that they consume the dragonfly larvae. They also use the dragonfly larvae in treating diseases.
How important would these dragonfly larvae be in their diet?
Sometimes if they don't have something to eat, they go to the river and then they collect the larvae, and that would serve as food or meal for that day. Or sometimes there is an excess amount of food or dragonfly larvae, they share it to their neighbors or to the community.
It sounds as if it would be especially important when there's a shortage of other foods. Yeah. How do they collect it?
They usually go to the river and then just simply hand-pick the larvae. Sometimes they look underneath the rocks or the stones, and then they also collect the larvae, sometimes using the net, or they call it salak. After the rain and there is flood in the river, they go to the river and collect the larvae. Sometimes they combine the larvae and the other aquatic organisms, just like small fishes, snails, in one menu. Or sometimes if there's a lot of larvae, they roast it, they grill it, or they mix it with vegetables.
Have you tried eating it yourself?
The Triboli tribe able to introduce to us the kind of a unique menu, and it tastes like shrimp.
So, do you prefer it grilled or boiled, or what's your favorite larva recipe?
The recipe prepared to us during the data gathering activity is it's mixed with a small amount of water, and it's just like a soup. It tastes good. So I hope you can try it as well.
Do you peel off the exoskeleton?
The whole larvae is used. We don't peel, we don't remove the skin or the limbs. What's interesting about the Triboli is they also use the Odonata larvae in medicine. Sometimes the traditional healer will use the larvae, then she will just simply go to the river and then return to the patient and then would prepare the larvae.
You mentioned that the adult dragonflies also have a use and a significance in this culture.
The adult dragonflies, actually, they call it klowong. So it is commonly used by the farmers. So what they did is they usually collect two dragonflies, and then they get a pole, two poles, and place it in the east and in the west sides of the rice field, and then they tie the dragonfly, and that prevents the bird, particularly the sparrow, to attack their field. Um, so they usually do that 90 days after planting the rice. They left the dragonfly roam around the field. It's
So
just like a security guard.
this sort of connection with dragonflies is part of the traditional culture for the Taboli people, but there have been a lot of changes in recent times. So how is that cultural relationship changing for them?
So when I asked them, do you still practice eating the Odonata larvae? And some said, yes, the elders, but not anymore with the young generation. Some of them are eager to collect the insect, and maybe because of the influence of their lola, their elders, their lolo, they try to eat. But some said that there is a disgust factor because for them it looks strange and it looks weird. They would prefer to eat other type of food which is already available in the area, just like the tilapia is abundant in Lake Cebu, but it is actually an introduced species of fish in the area. For us researchers, it's a really high time to document those practices, and we all know that because of the impact of technology nowadays, those knowledge are now in danger.
Are there stories about Odonata dragonflies or songs?
One of the participants mentioned to us that they use the said insect in their lullaby. So the Odonata larvae, or they call it kanimi, is humble, respectful, while Klenge or the frog has a always jealous, has a what they call it, crab mentality. And then, but despite their differences, they agreed to be friends and then look for food, gather food from the water. So the larvae allowed the crab to, what we call that, to make decisions, and but but allowing the crab to do some decisions led to their misunderstanding. So, but in the end of the day, they were able to resolve their conflicts, and then for them to maintain their harmonious relationship. So the person who told us that story emphasizes that the Tibuli people do have high respect with their elders and their tribal leaders, particularly in the decision makings to settle disputes. They do have high regards with nature, and they believe that the trees, the stones, the mountains has spirit. For example, if they want to go to river and then collect and then they collect the Odonata larvae, they will just simply throw a coin, and they would utter a prayer, or they would in their minds telling the spirit, we will just collect the organism in the river for us, for food, for medicine. So please do not harm us.
You plan to do more research in the area?
We are currently working on papers right now, particularly on the use of other insects, not only the Odonata, but we also have some records on how they use the order Hymenoptera, or the bees, particularly in their culture in grass casting. And we're planning to go back to the community and to share the results. Actually, we have already consulted the community on the data that we gathered and asked them if the data are correct. It's an educational material that we can share to the area and particularly to the children, because we know that the study could somehow later on preserve their knowledge by teaching their children, oh, this is the result of their study that we conducted.
Thank you so much, Rizalyn, for coming to talk with us today. For our listeners, there will be more insect videos coming up. You can go see them on the website at boghaunter.com. as well as the weekly comic updates. Thank you so much for watching.